In a recent interview, President Traore made a striking statement. "We are not a democracy, rather we are in a revolution." Traore's statement is the reason why some of his decisions have been criticized, especially by the West. But beyond criticism, some elements of the West who wish to see Burkina Faso return to the so-called democracy have orchestrated a notorious plan to eliminate Traore. These Western elements are not happy with the direction that Traore is steering his country, and as a result, have decided to eliminate him. To do this, they have a significant monetary offer to entice some Burkinabe soldiers to remove Traore from him. Specifically, the sum of $5 million. But these Western elements got the shock of their life? What exactly happened? Let's find out. We have heard stories of how the West have orchestrated countless assassinations and coups in the African continent. They did this in order to eliminate African leaders that stood against their neo-colonial practices and replace them with African leaders who chose to be puppets of the West. But reading about these stories and seeing one happening right in our time is completely different. From the beginning, Traore presented himself as a staunch anti-imperialist who would not hesitate to fight for the sovereignty and independence of his country. As a result, all of his actions, though condemned by the West and their supporters, have been geared towards that line. However, this is the reason why Traore has been the subject of multiple assassinations and coup attempts. It is simply history repeating itself, but some people are too blind to see it. Think about it. Why is it that corrupt African leaders, including those who have ruled their countries for decades with sham elections, have never experienced assassinations attempts? Why does history reveal to us that only those who dared to stand against the dictates of the West were eliminated? You see, some people even within Africa have called Traore a dictator who is only interested in grabbing power. But if that were true, why has he been the subject of more than 10 assassination attempts? One thing people have not thought about is that a bad leader would ensure that those around him are also satisfied to ensure that they do not turn against him. This is why in African democracy, the president ensures that all the ministers and politicians surrounding him have access to the wealth that he enjoys. But in Traore's situation, this is not the case. And that is why some elements in Burkina Faso have worked with the West to remove Traore from power. You see, whenever the West wants to eliminate a leader, it always uses those close to the leader. We have seen it over and over again, and it was not different in President Traore's case. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this. In a startling turn of events, some elements of the West that sought to see Traore out of the leadership of Burkina Faso decided to turn the Burkinabe military against Traore. To do this, an agent was sent to Burkina Faso with a suitcase filled with about $5 million. This Western agent disguised himself as an investor that intended to invest in the Burkinabe economy. But his mission had nothing to do with investing in Burkina Faso. His true mission was to cause destabilization by removing Traore from power. Now, according to an anonymous source, the agent has ties to powerful foreign entities whose goal is to destabilize not just Burkina Faso, but the Sahel region at large. For these foreign entities, Burkina Faso represents a critical geological area in West Africa, which is rich in natural resources like gold. And the fact that it is currently positioned in the center of a region struggling with insecurity and chaos makes it even more attractive. This is because foreign entities can easily make huge profits both financially and otherwise in areas where there is chaos and insecurity. His plan was simple. Get into the country, observe the soldiers, and look out for those who seem to have issues with Traore's leadership. The plan was for him to offer these ones the $5 million in his suitcase so that they can orchestrate a coup. This way, not only would Traore be eliminated, but no one would be able to trace it back to the West. The narrative would be that a group of soldiers decided to overthrow Traore. From an objective standpoint, this was a brilliant plan. So, this agent went to work. Together with his suitcase of cash, the agent stepped foot in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital. There, he began to observe the soldiers. He spent weeks doing this until he found some soldiers that he could approach. This agent was so confident that the plan would work because it involves money. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for President Traore, he met the shock of his life. You see, the soldiers he happened to come across were staunch loyalists of President Traore. These soldiers have seen hothead efforts that Traore put into outfitting the Burkinabe military. Before Traore, these soldiers were living and fighting insecurity under the worst conditions you could think of. The so-called democratic government, which heeded the advice of French military advisors, did not deem it fit to improve the working conditions of the soldiers. The military budget was so low that the soldiers could not access good food, good shelter, and good military equipment. As Traore wound earlier revealed, this condition dampened the morale of the soldiers to fight the war. But when Traore came into the scene, everything changed. The Burkinabe military has drastically improved with good working conditions and better military equipment. Of course, these soldiers have seen all Traore has done, and as such, most of them have decided to be loyal to Traore. So unfortunately for the agent, he happened to meet some of the loyalists. Now this is where it gets even more interesting. They did not make it known to the man that they were loyal to their president. Instead, they decided to play along in order to uncover the destabilization plot. They knew that they were dealing with someone who had the backing of some powerful foreign entities, and it was necessary that they uncover who was behind everything. So it was not just about catching the agent, which they could easily have done, but it was also about finding those behind him, because the forces behind the agent could easily send another agent. So instead of outrightly rejecting the man and arresting him, the soldiers decided to report everything to their superiors. Their superiors in turn alerted the Burkinabe National Security Forces. And, together, they devised a plan to uncover the plot. For some people, this may seem like something from a Hollywood movie, but this is actually what happened in Burkina Faso. For several weeks, the Burkinabe soldiers pretended to be interested in the deal. They met with the agent countless times, exchanging information with him. But behind it all, they were actually gathering information and reporting everything back to their superiors. No doubt, it was a huge risk they were taking. But these brave soldiers were determined to do whatever it took to uncover the destabilization plot. Finally, after weeks of gathering enough information about the agent and those behind him, the Burkinabe National Security Forces decided to move to do something drastic. By drastic, we mean a dramatic takedown which involved arresting the suspect red-handed with hard evidence. On the D-Day, the soldiers arranged a meeting with the agent. They had told him that they were ready to collect the money and make the necessary arrangement to eliminate Traore through a coup. On his part, the agent was confident about his ability to secure the loyalty of the soldiers. After all, he would give them the sum of $5 million as a form of compensation. It was also intended to be used to fund a coup that would overthrow Traore, plunge the country into chaos, and create a vacuum that could be effectively explored by foreign entities. Unfortunately for the agent, his devious plan had already been relayed to the big guys in the Burkinabe military, and a counterplan had been devised. So on the said day, the soldiers went to the agreed location. But just as the agent was about to release the fund, intelligent officers from the Burkinabe military stormed the location. The man, together with his suitcase of cash, was taken into custody by the military. But this was not where it ended. Immediately, the military launched a series of investigations and interrogations. This was necessary in order to uncover the full depth of the destabilization plot against Traore, Burkina Faso, and the Sahel region at large. Now, according to the reports, there are some Western entities that plan to take advantage of some internal challenges in the Burkinabe military. You see, the truth is that even though President Traore has done a remarkable job outfitting the military, not everyone in the Burkinabe military is loyal to President Traore. There are some in the military that are still loyal to the former military leader, Paul-Henri Damiba. When Traore took over in 2022, some of the soldiers decided to take over power from Traore, but were unsuccessful. This was the first coup attempt experienced by Traore, but thankfully it wasn't successful. Besides those loyal to the former junta, there is also another group loyal to France. It may sound strange to say that an African soldier would be loyal to a foreign country, but that is the truth. Traore revealed this in an interview earlier this year. According to him, when the French forces were still in the country, the French military advisor would pick certain soldiers and send them to France for training. But their training went beyond the usual training for the military. It also included making them loyal to France. Traore revealed then when he took over power These soldiers were called by high brass in France to wrest control from him, but unfortunately they failed. So you can see how the Burkinabe military is to some extent divided, and this is what the foreign entities decided to take advantage of. They sent their agent to bribe some of the soldiers who were not happy with Traore's leadership. Unfortunately, the agent happened to meet those who are loyal to Traore, and their plan shattered. Now, as the news of the agent's plan was made public, it sent a strong message to everyone, especially the foreign entities, that Burkina Faso would not be brought down to its knees by foreign plots or the lure of dirty money. How remarkable. In a televised address, President Traore elaborated on the plot and praised the bravery and loyalty of the soldiers who risked their lives to protect their nation. According to Traore, the operation was not just to stop the agent, but also to send a clear and strong message that Burkina Faso is united against corruption, foreign interference, and any attempt to destabilize the country. The best part of all this is that, contrary to the expectation of the foreign entities, the successful sting operation has bolstered the morale of both the Burkinabe military and the general Burkinabe population. Not only did it send a warning to those not loyal to Traore, it also sent a message to the West that the soldiers and people of Burkina Faso are united and supportive of Traore's administration. So, not only did a mutiny not occur within the ranks of the Burkinabe military, President Traore also garnered the loyalty and support of his troops. But even though the immediate threat was neutralized, the question that continues to ring through our mind is, who was behind the plot? Was it an isolated incident, or part of a larger plan to cause chaos and destabilize the region of West Africa? Currently, investigations are still ongoing, but there are a few things that are clear. The first thing is that the suspect was certainly not working alone. He was obviously a pawn in the hands of some foreign entities whose endgame was to destabilize Burkina Faso and make a profit from it. While some still regard Burkina Faso as one of the poorest countries in Africa, the fact is that Burkina Faso, like every other African country, is rich in natural resources, including gold, manganese, and phosphate. And like most African countries, Burkina Faso has been a target for foreign powers who want to control its wealth and resources. But, as we have stated earlier, Burkina Faso's strategic location, coupled with its current system, has made it a target for those who want to exploit its resources. According to an intelligence report from the Burkinabe military, the suspects have connections to foreign operatives based in neighboring countries. Apparently, these operatives were working on behalf of powerful entities with an interest in controlling the region's resources. So, it wasn't just about bribing soldiers to cause chaos, but a grander strategy to undermine the sovereignty of Burkina Faso. But what's even worse is that the plot did not end with weakening the Burkinabe government, thereby causing instability. It included creating a ripple effect across the entire Sahel region. You see, by destabilizing Burkina Faso, these foreign entities plan to gain leverage over other nations in West Africa. You see, under Traore's leadership, Burkina Faso has been gradually reclaiming control over its natural resources. This is despite the fact that the country is still battling with insecurity. President Traore has not allowed the insecurity crisis to stop him from reclaiming the country's sovereignty in terms of its natural resources. He has done this by renegotiating contracts with foreign companies, taking control of the gold mining industry, and prioritizing national interests over foreign profit. But Traore's actions have not gone unnoticed by those who have profited heavily from the former system. As you know, a Burkina Faso that is stable and self-sufficient presents a threat to their ability to maintain influence and make profits. So the plot to destabilize Burkina Faso was simply to ensure that these foreign entities could maintain influence in the region and make profit. Thankfully, however, the plot was stopped by the loyalty of the Burkinabe military. We applaud their loyalty and bravery. Now here is an interesting thought. If you think about it, President Traore has been quite lucky compared to past African leaders that stood against the West. You see, since he took over power, he has experienced more than 10 coups and assassination attacks. And all these begs the question, will there be a time when the assassination attempt on President Traore stops? No doubt we are not the only ones asking this question, because more than any current African leader, President Traore has been subjected to the most assassination attempts. But unlike this recent plot where the soldiers were loyal, The painful part is that the majority of the attempts were carried out by forces within Burkina Faso in collaboration with external forces. This is quite sad, but it only points to the fact that the problem of Africa is Africans. Check through history. All the African leaders assassinated by the West were killed by their fellow Africans. Thomas Sankara was killed by Blaise Compaoré and his fellow soldiers. Patrice Lumumba was killed by Mobutu, a close friend of his who later went on to become Congo's worst dictator. Gaddafi was betrayed by Ugandan President Museveni and killed by fellow Libyan rebels. The list is endless. And the one thing they all have in common is the fact that the dates to stand against the dictates of the West. But the reverse is the case for African leaders who are pro-West. Take, for example, Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea. These two African countries are led by African leaders who have ruled for more than 3 decades. These leaders have ruled so much that they are called African presidents for life because they have shown no sign of stepping down. Now, if their rule had made their countries great, nobody would have a problem with the ruling. However, these two countries are among the poorest in Africa, yet their leaders are living in affluence and wealth. Despite these, you would never hear the West call these two African leaders dictators. Instead, they are hailed as allies because these leaders are pro-West and support their interests. This has, however, promoted corruption, poverty, and decades of underdevelopment because the African leaders who are all weak usually look the other way to allow the West unrestricted access to their resources. In exchange, these African leaders can loot as much funds as they want and rule as long as they like, without the international community condemning them. The only thing they have to do is conduct a farce election so that the West can continue to say that they are upholders of democracy. We have seen this happen over and over again before our very eyes. However, African leaders like Traore are termed dictators and end up dead, assassinated by local forces influenced by the West. But thankfully, Traore has been lucky so far, evading every attempt thrown his way. But it's not really surprising though, because as Traore said, Burkina Faso is not a democracy, but a revolution. The West can say whatever they want, but we stand with President Traore. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.